morning from this special edition of the Men's League Legend podcast. We have a special edition as only 3 of the members are up here in Fraser, Michigan today. Gentlemen, how are we doing today? Everybody doing well? Get all your sleep?
Oh, I slept wonderfully. These beds are the most comfortable thing I've ever slept on.
I might not leave.
So, as normal, we'll give our this day in hockey. 2013, on May 24th, James Neal scores 3 goals to clinch the Eastern Conference Championship against the Ottawa Senators. The reason this is so notable is it's the only time and the first time the Penguins have clinched the Eastern Conference Championship at home. So, good job to James Neal. I know he's killing it right now in Edmonton, but I personally thought he was a good player, and I would have liked to have seen him stick around a little bit longer, but hey, to each their own, right? Boys, let's get right into it. So, the topic everybody wants us to talk about, and I'm having trouble trying to work it into a normal conversation, is the Tavares hit. So, everybody knows what happened. What can Corey Perry in that situation do differently, and what can the league do to mitigate injuries like that? So, when you look at the hit, Corey Perry did everything he could to jump over Tavares. Is there any other scenario? Now, I understand it's a split-second decision, but can he try to break up there? Or if he, if he, tries to dive into the lower body instead of the head? What are your guys' thoughts on the matter?
I think there's absolutely nothing he could have done. It's, like you said, split-second decision. He tried to avoid him, but whenever you're playing hockey, it's, you have these things occur. It just, some things are worse than others, and in this case, Tavares just took one to the head, and it didn't look too good. I hope, he ends up being okay, but I don't think there's anything Perry could have done differently.
I mean, with the way that the padding is situated now, it's built to take a puck and block a shot. Now you take that off the head going the speed that he was, as Tavares was falling down, you're going to have an injury. Multiple sportscasters have said, these are built to protect, but they're also weapons, depending on how you use them. Now that's an accident, that's an accidental situation. But that's why I think it was as severe as it was. That, and it's a long-time veteran hockey player. He's going to have strength behind each push. So no matter what he does, like we've just said before already, no matter what you do, it was a split second. I don't think he even had time to register that I should dive, I should get out of the way.
Sure, I get that, but do you think it was the shin guard, or do you think if he would have hit kneecap to head, a similar injury would have been incurred? Because I think at the speed that he was traveling, anything in the knee area or the skate, I think the only way you get away with that is hitting him with your shin, which, again, it's easy to say after the fact, hindsight's 20/20, but I don't necessarily agree that the knee pad was the cause of the injury. I think that game's played at such a high speed, and any connection to the head in that situation, whether it was with a stick or a glove or a kneecap, I mean, that's still going to cause very, very traumatic injury.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, the speed at which, if I hit you with a knee as compared to an open hand, you're going to have a lot more of a force behind that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking that his head's going to whip. I think he more or less had whiplash, and that might be causing the effects that he had. But he was not right after that. You can see as he tries to get up, he falls backward. He's not able to support himself. So he, I hope he doesn't have any long-term damage like Savard. But you always risk that. Look at Crosby with all his concussions.
Yeah, so that's a lot of the speculation is, let's use 2011, 2012 Crosby as an example of back then when he was not really producing because the concussions and the injury line was so bad. Is that the route that we see Tavares taking, or do you think he can bounce back from this a lot quicker, as he doesn't have as bad of a history as concussions?
I think that's too early. I think that's too early to determine at this point. You're gonna have to see, because with Sid, you look, I can't remember who hit him during the Winter Classic, but he took that shot to the head. It didn't really look like much, honestly, but you see it haunted him for almost a year, maybe even a little over a year. Tavares, this is just brand new. I think it looked a lot worse than what happened to Sid, but you just can't tell yet. You're gonna have to wait till he gets back on the ice and how he's feeling later on down the road before you can compare it to something like Crosby was dealing with.
Yeah, that was I want to say it was David Steckel who did the hit. Again, I don't think that he meant to do it. If you go back and look at Crosby's head in the Winter Classic, he has his head turned back. He's looking at the play. Steckel's skating back to cover. Unfortunately, again, it caught him just right. We don't know everything about the brain and how it functions entirely. So one Crosby hit can be different than a Tavares hit. How is he built? Potentially a little bit different. I mean, they're both brick houses when it comes to skating. But just depending on how your head gets torqued, all that kind of stuff, that can really affect you. And I think a couple games later, I don't even think Crosby sat out. I think it was against the Lightning. I want to say Hedman hit him from behind, kind of drove his head into the glass. After that, he was like, you know what, like I'm not feeling right. I need to sit out and have this looked at more.
I know in the construction world, OSHA and PPE is such a prevalent factor that they're always stressing, all right, wear your work gloves and your hard hat and your safety glasses and all this other equipment. Do we see any equipment changes, whether it's this year or the next year, that is going to help mitigate, maybe not necessarily this hit, but concussions as a whole? The idea of having no cage and no visor is completely asinine to me, that I can't really wrap my head around how it hasn't been changed yet.
I think if there's any change to the equipment, it will be the helmet. If they do introduce cages, new helmet technology. Beyond that, I don't see anything really changing because you have, all these guys shooting this hard rubber puck. Like, they're gonna have to keep the equipment the way it is, or you're gonna have more injuries that aren't head-based. And I don't think they're gonna want to take that route. There's gonna be too many people getting hurt if they're trying to cut down on equipment.
I mean, there's no way to soften ice, unfortunately. I think it was a couple years ago. I think CMU had been pitched an idea, or maybe even college students all over the world, or at least the country, to try and at least see how you could maybe fix the helmet, or if you can at least have the boards be a little bit more forgiving in case you do have a going into the board situation. The NFL is already looking at different kinds of turf as far as when you come down. As long as that head's at least cushioned a little bit more, maybe that can reduce the issues of concussions and then having them develop CTE. But no, I mean, it's just very hard because, again, you have to protect against a vulcanized piece of rubber coming at you between 50 and 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and you're right. When you look at college hockey, you still see these concussions and these hits, and they are wearing a cage. But there's plenty of different helmet designs out there between the different sports and the different applications. And I just wonder when and if there's going to be a huge push to fix this. I mean, you mentioned CTE, and like the next couple of years, the amount of concussion-proof helmets that came out in the NFL was amazing. And you don't really see that in the NHL. And I wonder if it has to do with, the players or the player safety board or the LPA. I just don't know where that push comes from and if it comes. But I think it's a little overdue, to be honest.
I mean, if you look at the players, they get a vote in what they may or may not want. So, I mean, at least for now, and I think it started, maybe 5-7 years ago, where they mandated any new player coming into the league has to have a visor. If you were in there before, that's your choice. As for if they're going to require a cage like college does, unfortunately, if somebody takes one too many to the teeth, like we've seen Ian Cole block a shot, having a couple chicklets go flying out on camera. Crosby having that deflected shot by Orpik, breaking his jaw, he's out for however long. I think if it keeps happening, I think it's so inconsistent with the way it happens that's why they're like, you know what, like, I still want to have the freedom to not have something blocking my entire vision.
So the vision is always the first argument that comes up whenever you talk about cages. And I've never worn one of the bubbles, the face shield bubbles, but there has to be something out there, and maybe it's not designed yet and it needs to be designed, that doesn't inhibit vision and the feel of the rink, but still is able to protect a lot of your face. Because you're right, what's the record right now? 109 miles per hour for a slap shot?
I think it's like 108.8 or something
One,
like that.
Geez, sue me. Thanks. That's moving pretty darn fast. That's faster than most baseballs. Why you're not wearing something more to protect? I don't understand it.
I think the other thing too is how you mentioned they're designing helmets for the NFL that are like sort of concussion proof. But you got to think, if you're comparing all the sports, there's not really a sport that moves as fast as hockey. And they're going to want a helmet that's lightweight. Like, they can't be skating around with no NFL helmet. And it's like, you got to conform with it, but it's just, I just don't see them really making a massive change unless if there's some, breaking technology hitting the market that can really...
So we're still using plastic helmets with foam insulation. When can Kevlar and resistant padding help mitigate some of those damages? I mean, we're not engineers here, we might not solve this, but it seems like there's so many different materials and applications of those materials out there that somebody could figure out a better way. Because everybody, I mean, if you watch the press conference after the game, Corey Perry was sick to his stomach. Nobody wants to watch a superstar like that get hurt.
I'm not going to mention a player's name.
Yeah, thank you. It just doesn't seem like... It seems like if it's not this one, then it's the next one. If it's not the next one, then it's the next one after that. And at some point, somebody, maybe Connor McDavid, somebody who is a world-class athlete, is going to have a season career-ending injury in the same fashion that Tavares had, and at that point, things are going to change.
Have either of you seen Ice Guardians?
No.
It was on Netflix. It was a whole thing about how the enforcer role came through hockey. And at one point, they even go into the point of, Gretzky had McSorley. Gretzky would not go to L.A. without McSorley. Crosby has never had that. Like, Ovechkin is, again, a brick house. Like, he can kind of take care of himself.
Human.
He's never had anybody go after him.
Well, Tom
and
Wilson's always there.
True.
I still think I'd take Ovechkin over Wilson, honestly.
Well, yeah, of course.
But the point being is, if Crosby had Reeves early on, like he had Larocque taught him how to fight. Now is Crosby knocking teeth out left and right like McGregor or somebody? No, but he's able to take care of himself and kind of shake an opponent. Like, he's just so strong, you can't really battle that.
Yeah.
But in the Ice Guardians documentary, they go into saying how Crosby has been affected the most out of any superstar in any bit of history. Like, even like Lemieux at least had a little bit more protection with like the bigger bodies, but Crosby's never had that. I think the closest he's had is either Larocque. If you want to throw Gary Roberts in there, sure. But I think Ryan Reeves was maybe the closest.
Ryan Reeves, Steve Downey.
You could throw Downey in there.
Asher. I mean, who else did we have there for a while?
But it's never been.
I mean, you could consider Matt Cook there, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You're right. So I think he's had that player around him. He hasn't had somebody to stick with him that he can, still have as his shield in his back pocket, but also start to work on building some chemistry and producing something offensively.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, they interviewed all those guys, like Dave Parker, like basically everybody that was an enforcer, saying, like, like they'd have the superstars come up to them afterward, or whomever was on the team, they're like, hey, I feel a lot more comfortable with you on the ice. I'm not getting run every night. Again, can Crosby take care of himself? Yes, for the most part. But I mean, if you want to blindside a guy or you want to drill him into the boards with his nameplate
There's
showing.
no one stopping them.
Yeah, I mean, and it gets to the point where you either have player safety reprimanding these people, or you're going to have the players police the game themselves, which is why we had what happened with New York and Washington.
Well, we're going to take a quick break before we go to our next topic, and once we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about rule changes in the NHL, and not that any of this stuff will happen, but it's fun to think about and talk about. So you're listening to Men's League Legend. We'll be right back after these few messages.
Looking for that perfect holiday gift? Look no further. Grove City Hockey is partnering with By Designs to fit your perfect hockey gift ideas. Search for custom trophy displays, wall decor, picture frames, nameplates, and so much more. Your imagination is the limit. Email them today at bydesigncustom@gmail.com and tell them Grove City Hockey sent you for 10% off. By Design Custom, crafting dreams into reality.
Welcome back to Men's League's Legends, where again we have a condensed crew up here in Fraser, Michigan for the MyHa Championship weekend. Getting back to talking a little bit about rule changes and the evolution of the league, you never are going to be able to change the rules directly, but it's always fun to talk about some of these controversial rules and can we make the game more entertaining and more fun by changing some rules. So the first rule that I want to bring up for you guys to think about is, as we've seen the last year with the Svechnikov and the Forsberg goals, players are getting a lot more daring and a lot more creative with how they're scoring goals. And one of the constant ways that those goals get waved off is a stick being above the crossbar. Now, why is that a rule? A lot of people think it's a rule because you're getting the stick up into the goalie's head, but 9 times out of 10, the goalie's head is still below the crossbar, and that risk of injury is still there. So, why is that a rule? Does it make sense to get rid of that rule? Does it add to the game? Does it take away from the game? And I'm just kind of interested in your guys' thoughts.
That's one I've sort of went back and forth on. I think it would be cool to see them waive that, so you have all those high sticking goals where players are sitting there hitting them out of the air, being very impressing with that. But I can see where they're coming from also with worrying about injury, because then if you're sitting there full baseball swing and trying to hit a puck out of the air, then you smack the goalie in the head.
Oh, you still make it a penalty. If you make it a 10-minute penalty. I mean, you can change that however you want.
Yeah, 100%. But if the goal's not going to count, you're not going to have these attempts. So it's sort of like a chain reaction type of thing. So, I mean, I honestly would like to see a change, but I can see the opposition on that as well.
I mean, if you're going to have the rule where if I follow through with a pass or a shot and I end up clipping you in the head, to where it's not a penalty because it's a following through action, it shouldn't matter if it's above the crossbar at that point, because then it would technically be considered a shot. I think it's more a player safety situation where I go to reach up and all of a sudden Skylar's right next to me. I'm not noticing that because I'm focusing on the puck. Next thing you know, he has 7 teeth gone. So again, is that a player situation, or is that, I mean, again, you go back to our previous topic of helmet safety.
I'd love to see an NHL vote on this
between
the players.
It'd be amazing, because if you look at some of the like the YouTube videos of guys, messing around in their backyard and all of the stick handling stuff that they can do, I mean, none of that is NHL legal because it's all above. But my God, some of the shots and goals you could get, I think it would really bring in a lot of fans that maybe don't care about the game, but they want to see ridiculous stuff like that. Like, have you guys ever went on YouTube and just watched, like, lacrosse highlights?
The only thing that that comes to mind when I think of the lacrosse highlights those are always the kids who can't skate.
Sure. So here's the thing. None of us have watched a full lacrosse game, but we've seen these crazy trick shots for lacrosse players because it adds to the game, and they have viewership just because of some of these crazy goals. I think the NHL could pull NBA and MLB viewers the same way. Is if you see some of these ridiculous shots, it's like, well, that's really impressive, and why isn't this a thing in the league all the time? I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I can't possibly see a downside by bringing the high stick into it. So on to the next one. We're going to keep with the goals and crazy highlights to bring in fans, but we're going to switch to the goaltender position. So as in football, if a ball goes out of bounds and you jump over the line and you catch it out of bounds and you toss it back into play to a teammate, that's a completely legal play. So if a puck is shot in the middle of the net and a goalie reaches back behind him with his glove, catches the puck, and pulls it back across the line, per the rules right now, that's a good goal. Even though that goalie made an unbelievable effort and a very athletic save to grab that puck and pull it across the line. So, do we like the way the rule is now, or should the rule be changed a little bit so that if it doesn't touch the netting, if it doesn't touch the ice, if it's grabbed and pulled back across before it touches anything, it's a good goal? I already know what some of the problems are, but I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the matter first.
I think that it should stay the way it is. If you're looking at the comparison, with football is they're going out of bounds and bringing it back in. It's not like they're going, kicking a field goal. It's going through the post and then coming back out. So it's you're not taking the scoring aspect into that comparison. But it's always been the rule that if the puck crosses the line, there's a little bit of white, it's a good goal. I think it should just stay that way. I don't see a point to change it. I love seeing these highlight reel saves, and even whenever someone makes a save, you do still see it for a couple of days afterwards, and it's not like 10 years down the road they're going to look back. Even if they made the save and the goal didn't count, you're not going to sit here and still see those videos. I like it the way it is, honestly. Bender?
I was at a game where that happened. I can't remember who. I want to say it was either Connor Hellebuck against the Penguins doing it, or if it was one of the Penguin goaltenders making the save. But Hellebuck stands out in my mind. I want to say they went back and the goal counted. Like Scour said, I think soccer and hockey, at least off the top of my head, because it's fairly early in the morning, are the only two sports where if the ball crosses out of the... Like in soccer, you can curve the ball, it go out of bounds and come back in, but it's still going to be labeled out of bounds because it crossed that line, even if it wasn't on the ground. So, I mean, that's a game of inches, both soccer and hockey. So, I mean, if it crosses the line, even if it's in his glove and he reaches back, same situation. I mean, even the Mike, I think it was the Coyotes and the Sabres, puck pops up, goes into Mike Smith's goalie pants. He doesn't know where it is. He skates backward into the net. The puck's fully across because his back end is almost touching the back bar. Yeah. So, I mean, somewhat semi-situation. Yes, he's going to end up bringing it back out, but...
Yeah, so those are good points. I mean, the issue I have with it is review, being able to see did it actually touch the net or did it not. But, you gotta appreciate when a goalie does something like that,
100%.
How unbelievably athletic and skilled that is. Kind of transitioning into our next rule, and it's sticking with goalies. Patrick Waugh is one of the only goalies to get this penalty that I know of, but taking the puck as a goalie and crossing center red to try and go down on the offensive rush. You'll see goaltenders in soccer do it all the time. They'll go the whole length of the field and try to score a goal. And I don't really understand why a goalie can't do that. If you pull a goalie, you can put another offensive guy out there. It's not like you can't create offense by using your goalie. So why can't you use the physical goalie player on offense?
Honestly, I don't see the reason for this rule. Like how you're saying, I mean, if you wanted to have a play where the goalie comes in and is part of the offense, why not let him? I don't really see too many goalies, skating past center ice. I honestly could see Fleury doing it just for, just for a joke. But Yeah, I don't see the reason for this rule. I think it's one of those pointless ones that are in the rule book just to be in there, but honestly, I don't see the point for it.
I mean, they developed the trapezoid for Brodeur with how well he handled the puck. I don't know if somewhere a long time ago somebody who was making rules saw a goaltender and going down and just deking everybody out of their minds. But it just, maybe it was one of those like classic kind of rules that just stayed like as a tradition.
Are we overthinking it being a offensive penalty or a goalie protection penalty, where they don't want goalies skating out with people that can hit them at full force and, not be agile enough to, avoid and, I guess, take hits from big defensemen? Or is it purely just a goalie, you stay and you keep your net, and don't you move, you stay right there? No, you stay in your net. Patrick, we've talked about this, you stay in your net. Or is it something a little bit bigger than that than we're not just thinking of?
Honestly, if they're coming out this skate, like they know what they're getting into. They're also more protected as well, so you got to think of that aspect. I mean, they're not going to be as agile, they're not going to be able to move as well, but I think if they're coming out, and then that also leads to at what point, like, where do they have to cross for them to be able to be hit at that point?
That's a great point. I mean, the David Ayres situation would never happen if Mrazek didn't come out of his net to try and play a puck.
Yeah.
You've seen that a lot, like 50-50 puck. It's against the boards. I mean, you've seen how many goaltenders get flipped, or you've seen even the Marian Gaborik flip, like with Hasek coming out, stacking the pads, and literally flipping over.
That was beautiful.
Can I pause for a second? Just because I didn't realize this until like yesterday. Marian Gaborik is signed with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Still. This many years later.
Is he really? I thought he retired.
No, he's on their IR so that they can claim cap space back onto their team.
Well, that just makes me think of another. Sorry to cut off what we were talking about, but what do you guys think of the whole cap situation?
It's our third topic,
and it is our third topic.
Let's go to a quick break here, and we'll get right into that third topic. You're listening to Men's League Legends.
Bonus Accounting is Western PA's premier accounting firm, offering payroll services, QuickBook advising, and business accounting, making them an accounting hat trick. Visit them today at bonusaccounting.com. Bonus Accounting, the firm of the future.
Welcome back to Men's League Legend, presented by Grove City Hockey. And I hate to cut you off on that, Skylar, but we want to keep our segments a little bit separate. So right before the break, we started talking about salary cap. So I'm going to let you take point on this one, and we'll kind of push the conversation to how we had it detailed. But go ahead and take point on the whole Tampa cap situation.
Well, if you guys didn't know, they threw Kucherov on that long-term IR, which I believe nothing gets thrown against the cap because he's on the long-term IR. Rumor has it he's been ready for the last 2-3 weeks before season ending, but they held him off just because they would have been over the cap, and I really don't know what would have happened in that situation.
So they have to send somebody down to waivers in that situation.
Okay.
But Stammer also came back at the same time, so between the two of them, you're talking about at least $19-20 million of cap.
The two biggest players. I respect Tampa for doing it. I think it's a scumbag move, but you're exploiting the rules, and
it's a scum rule. It's not the team's fault.
It's not the team. They're making the right move, but I think there could be a change to this later on, especially if you see Tampa go on to win the cup again with the powerhouse they have. I can see them changing the rules because of this.
So there's been a couple of different options thrown out there, and the one that I like the best is a tax for using like extra cap space. So what I mean by that is, beginning of the season, everybody gets $82 million. And then, if you put a team on IR, you can get that money back for your cap, but you have to pay a tax on that money. And that tax can be distributed to smaller market teams that need money to help, put competitive teams on the rink. That could be starting a women's National Hockey League. That could be, helping different rink renovations and philanthropic measures with that tax money. So you keep the rule basically the same, but it penalizes teams for exploiting it, but not just like penalizing them, but it's for a good reason that money goes towards.
Either they lose a higher ended draft pick,
or it doesn't exist at all. The only reason I'm saying that is because I want to say in the Premier League in England, for soccer, there are like a royalty tax. The bigger clubs can afford better players. The smaller clubs cannot. So yes, they're paying a tax, but I mean, that's pennies on the dollar for them. Unless you're going to make it something outrageous, which is like $100 million, to where it's like truly punishing them for quote unquote breaking the rule or finding a loophole to the rule.
I think, okay, you want to spend $3 million over the cap, well, that falls into the tier of you lose your third round pick. You want to spend $5 million over, you lose your second round pick.
That was my first thought as well. It's like you're going to have these teams like LA, New York, bigger base teams that are going to definitely take advantage of this. And then you look at the smaller market teams, which I see where you're going with, where taking the money that the league receives and, dishing it out to like lower market teams like, I don't know, like Florida or something like that. Like, I like the way it's going to go. I think they really need to get something set in stone if we would take that type of route.
So,
would there be a HIPAA rule like involved? Like, okay, prove to me that he has a broken leg. Prove to me that he can't play.
No, because those that's in there, and those team doctors, they don't. It's the same with concussion protocols. They're like, yep, he's fine.
That's what I was thinking. Like, they could just run off with, oh, he has a concussion. It'd be different if he comes in with, like, his leg in a cast and on crutches and stuff. But, you can't really prove that the guy definitely has a concussion.
So the other, I have always a problem with sacrificing draft picks because it screws everything up. It's not like let's say you're going to a rink and they're handing out skates and you get the first pair of skates, the second person gets the second. Eventually you get worse and worse skates going down, and at some point you just don't get skates. And so how is that fair to the players and the people that are making team-friendly deals trying to put together championship teams if the management is breaking the rules to inhibit? Like, Kucherov wants to play because the more goals, the more assists, the more points he gets, that's salary bonuses that he gets in there. So he wants to play to try to get those bonuses. So just because management tells him, hey, Nikita, you got to take 3 months off because we don't want you hurting our cap situation, that's not the player's decision. So why does a player playing on that team who now is going to get penalized with draft picks going to conform to that and not be a whistleblower? That's why I think if you make it money, things that only affect the ownership and the management, that's a different way of handling the situation. Because at the end of the day, caps is money. That's all that it is. It's not draft picks. It's not prospects. It's money that the teams are shelling out. That's why the whole Marian Gaborik thing is so crazy to me. He's never going to touch NHL ice again, but he's holding $4 million of IR Tampa's using.
It's like the same with Datsuk in Arizona. I don't know if they still have his contract, but you saw Detroit ship him off to Arizona. Arizona doesn't really have a lot of cap, and they can put that on the books no problem, and they probably got a pick or two. I mean, you look recently, they sort of lost a couple picks.
Do you think the Datsuk thing is a Kovalchuk situation where they're anticipating his return and they just want to keep his rights just in case?
I'd say no. That's like a 1% chance. I don't see Datsuk leaving
So was Kovalchuk.
Kovalchuk got baited with money. Datsuk wanted to go back home. I think that's the difference right there. It's like the same thing with Yager when he left the Rangers to go play in Russia. I think he got a little homesick, but the money was talking, realized he didn't really like the competition as much over there, came back over, and then,
It's untaxed in Russia.
You also know he's Czechoslovakian, not Russian, right?
Yeah, but I thought he played in Russia.
He plays for the KHL, but it's not in Russia.
I did know he was Czechoslovakian, so I will.
He wanted to go home to Russia in Czechoslovakia.
Damn it.
Close. No, the only reason I would say that it would be fair to take away the draft picks is, I mean, it's not fair to the quote-unquote draftees that would have been in the league, or at least involved in the league. But it's kind of like I'm the teacher and you're all my students, and guess what? I'm so fed up. Next person who talks, nobody's going out to recess.
So
Everybody gets punished.
So talk through your draft pick a little bit. So let's say Tampa gets they win the cup. They get the 31st overall pick this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do they just completely lose it?
It goes back into a lottery.
It goes back into a lottery.
And you can do your lottery situation of, the Sabres have a 15% chance. This can have this.
I
this
like
can have
this.
that.
I don't hate that, because that was the question: is do they automatically lose it? So, okay, so here's the next question: if they go into a lottery, do they have that 1/31st% of a chance of getting that pick back?
Absolutely not.
They're out of the lottery
They're
altogether.
out of it. Punish them.
I like this.
Wow. Iron fist over here.
Just imagine that if Pittsburgh lost their pick and then ended up going to Philly.
That's what I'm saying.
Whoa.
Like, guess what? The Penguins want to spend, like I said, they hit that threshold, or again, they'll probably find a way to not hit that threshold
Yeah.
before they lose that pick. But it's like, hey, guess what? If you want to spend that $5 million over, which that could have you have, let's just say they brought back James Neal. Say James Neal is 5 years ago and he's making that money. They bring him in, like, we're gonna have to go over, like we're gonna have to lose a draft pick, but they either either have a deep run or they don't have a deep run. Either way, you still spent over the money.
Okay, so you just touched on something. So is a draft pick enough of a punishment for this scenario? Because you just said they bring back James Neal saying, yep, we are prepared to, we know this is a shallow draft pool. We're prepared to lose our 31st overall. We're just going to go to the cup, and we're intentionally going to break rules for the cap situation. We're going to buy every ex-NHL player, put them on permanent IR, and just stack our team. Now, that's essentially what Tampa did, but they did it legally. So if you make it that you can't do that or else you lose a draft pick, are teams going to intentionally lose that draft pick just so they can have NBA-style superstar teams?
I mean, if that is what it ended up getting to. I mean, I know Arizona did it for a couple different players. I want to say. I know, I know somebody took on, was it David Clarkson? I don't know if I'm even
The dude from
remember.
Toronto?
Yeah, like he was with that and like Nathan Horton. Like when Nathan Horton was with the Bruins and he went to the Columbus, like they held that contract. And again, I don't know if that ended up going to Toronto, however that ended up happening. But people were harboring these contracts just so they would have VIR. They'd either reach the floor with it, or again, hey, we just traded for so and so, they're making $8 million. Great, move him to IR. Great, move him to do whatever you need to do. Move that money around however you see fit. But again, if you go $1 million over, there's a tier. You lose your fifth rounder. You go over by $5 million. $5 million and more. Guess what? Your first round is done. Anything more than that, guess what? 1, 2, and 3 are gone.
I would love to get this drawn up like to an actual like bracket to see what it'd go, because if you go $1 million over, no one's gonna care that they're losing their fifth round pick. People are gonna go with it.
I mean,
really, you think so?
Yeah, but you
fifth
said
rounder?
Look at John Marino. He's a 6th round pick.
Yeah, but
He's a beast.
that's a diamond in the rough.
Artemi Panarin wasn't drafted.
Yeah, but you have to look. He was also signed in Russia. He fell.
My point is, 5th rounders make it to the league and are good all the time. Those GMs have that down to such a science that it's beyond our comprehension.
Well, 100%.
But
look at that, Zook. He was a 7th rounder.
But I think that's the Russian factor coming into play, though. You got to look at all these Russian kids that have contracts in the KHL. They have trouble coming over. Bringing up Yager, he fell down in the draft to Pittsburgh because no one wanted to draft him. No one wanted to try to deal with the headache of him coming over. And Pittsburgh took a chance on him, and it worked out.
That's not what happened. He said he would only play for Pittsburgh. He'd only play with Mario Lemieux. Everybody's like, "Hey, we'll draft him." He's like, "No, I'm not gonna report."
I mean, that also happened with Lemieux too.
Yeah.
When Pittsburgh drafted him, they're like, he's like,
he wouldn't even
play.
put on the jersey whenever they drafted him
I don't think so.
because they were like gambling on him or something.
He
like
wanted
that.
to go to Montreal. I mean, we blew it
Yeah,
to get
of
him.
course.
I mean, the whole tanking situation. I mean, that was
We're like one of the big showcases for the.
The point is getting back to how Jake wants to put back into the hockey community of some sort. Again, that would if we have that lottery to where you say, hey, guess what? We're going to have the lottery because this team screwed up. This team went over their threshold. Guess what? Everybody else now gets to have the chance to take ownership of their draft pick. And yes, you still have that player get into the league.
That's what I don't know that I like that, but I don't necessarily have a problem with it right now. I guess my issue would be is let's take
This turned into a show hole.
All right.
let's take a team.
Sleep.
Let's take a team that, and I don't know one specifically, but their whole first line's contract is expiring at the end of this year. So this is it. They have to go for it. And they put out $80 million on top of the 80 that they already spent to put people on IR. So now they're buying 2 teams worth of salary. And they're just like, oh, yep, we're fine. We'll lose our draft picks because we're tanking anyways. So we'll go out get Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan McKinnon. Yeah, yep, we know we'll lose our draft picks. That's fine. You know, keep them. That's okay with us. We're getting a cup this year.
Do you have a limit on how many players you can have on long term?
I think you'd have to if you implement this system.
What happens if you actually go through that many players, like without this exploitive motive? You actually get that many players hurt on your team.
Then homeboy either has to be traded. I mean, you can't trade a hurt player, but like, and again, you make an amendment of, well, they're going to have their 6th player. Either you null the contract, and he's now a free agent, or he has to be traded, and he's under a certain clause. Like you put in for a certain, like, hey, like this is our 5th guy, like we're injury prone, like we don't know what's up. Like again, like with the Penguins, like that would be awful, like absolutely dreadfully awful. I would be so hurt. But that's the only way that you have this happen. That's the only way you can keep that. Like 3 players, that's completely understandable. Even 5 players is understandable. But I think once you hit that limit, again, like what Jake said, you can keep having people go on LTIR as much as you want.
Is there a difference between IR and LTIR whenever we're talking about this scenario?
It's the number of days. IR doesn't go against your cap. LTIR does. I think it's. You might want to correct me. 60 days.
Long term,
LTIR is 60 days or more.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought long term didn't.
IR goes against your cap. LTIR does not.
Yeah. So do you put a cap on both?
That's what I meant. Is that? Did I say it backwards? That's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry.
So do you only get like 5 players on LTIR and then like I don't know.
But what if you actually have like 5 players that are actually hurt?
They're SOL at that point. You gotta put them as a scratch, and you gotta pay them, and then you gotta take the consequences for it.
Say it was Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, Rust, Jari, and then the 6th one.
Okay. So do you do it that way, where you can have 5 players on LTIR, you can have as many you want on IR?
I mean, after the 7 days of IR or whatever the IR limit is, it's going to go against your cap. So I mean, you can have that player for 2 weeks, and then the second those 2 weeks end.
Sure. So that way, you have to put them in the lineup, whether or not you use them, and then you can put them right back on temporary IR, and it doesn't. Oh man, this is getting complicated.
Yeah, I think we're digging a little too far into this one.
It would just be a constantly revolving door. It's like, well, I'm going to put you on this for 2 weeks. Well, okay, you came off. Okay,
I'm going to put you on 2 weeks. You'll see a lot of players flipping. Like, I don't know. They would have to have like some serious structure with like so many reviews on it that there's basically no loopholes in it. Because even whenever you make something like that, someone's going to find a way to exploit it. Like. I mean, that's with everything.
Look how much we've just deep dove
into this in what 20 minutes.
Yeah, for real.
So I mean, if the NHL board was like, we should actually kind of think about something like this, like how long would it take them? It would take probably months. I mean, they're only talking about it for like an hour or two and then move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
But like we wouldn't see a change for probably a year or two. At
Oh
least.
yeah. It would
Until
take
then, people are going to still keep doing this.
So let's recap and wrap up this segment. So we agree that a change needs to come into play. What is a reasonable timetable that change happens?
I think it all depends on the cup run this year for Tampa. Like I said, if they go and win the Stanley Cup, that's the first thing people are going to point towards.
So what if they go and lose the Stanley Cup? What if they make it the whole way to the show and lose?
I think even with a deep run, then that's the first thing they're going to point to.
For sure.
100%. You already know. Expect the team that, say if they win the cup,
but it's not against the rules.
It's not against the rules, but they're going to get the media going. It's just, I feel like it's just not going to be an ideal situation. So if that occurs, then it's going to be short, I think, sooner rather than later at this point. I
think the other way around. I think it's going to be a long-term solution.
Even if they make a deep run?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I respect that.
Because Toronto did sort of the same thing.
Yeah, but when was the last time
Matthews,
Toronto won
Tavares,
Stanley Cup in
I mean,
1967?
Yeah, but I mean, they're going to keep going to the play. Like they're going to have a playoff streak here.
Well,
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be as far as or as long as the Penguins, but I think it's going to be sizable as long as they can keep Matthews happy and healthy, and Tavares, Marner, all those big guys.
Wow, left Nylander off there. Shots fired.
He's all right.
All right, boys. Well, thanks for this. Thanks for this special edition of Men's League Legends. Again, we are up in Fraser, Michigan this past weekend, and had a wonderful time at Fraser Hockeyland. Shout out to Mike Farinelli and Carl Richardson for inviting the boys up to do some broadcasting. Make sure you check out our highlight reels on our YouTube page from this past weekend. A lot of high-level, high-intensity hockey, and we'll see you guys next week for the 4th episode of Men's League Legend. You're listening to Men's League Legend, presented by Grove City Hockey.